Hopefully you are having a fantastic Thursday. I thought I'd just hop in and just share some thoughts on working with your PI. So for those not in the know, a PI is not a private investigator. That would be far too exciting for my life. A PI is a principal investigator. So usually someone who holds a grant who then employs people on that grant. So they're in charge of the research. They wrote the grant, probably with help of others, but they are in charge of the money. And why is this part of my life? Because I work with postdocs, and so usually your immediate boss is your principal investigator, your PI. And this relationship is so critical to being able to move on successfully to whichever career destination you want to after your postdoc. For absolute starters, these people will need to give you a reference. People might look slightly oddly at you if you don't have a reference from your current or very recent employer. So your principal investigator will need to write that. But quite often when I'm working one-to-one with postdocs, it's those relationships that have either broken down or perhaps even more sadly, just never really got off to a flying start. And I'm working on a course for next week, working with some postdocs, and a couple of thoughts leapt to mind about this relationship. Firstly, we have the Concordat for career development of researchers. And yes, there are duties of care from your institution and the funders, your research manager, who is probably your principal investigator. But there is also an onus on you to take control, put yourself in your driving seat of your career. The only person who's going to prioritize you is you. And so thinking about, right, how do we work successfully with our principal investigator? To some extent, if we're thinking of an academic career, we might be in that same sort of challenging pool of for grants. You know, if we're both in the same subject, we want to go forward, we're probably applying to the same funding calls, etc., etc. So I think it basically boils down to communication, as most workplace issues do, and universities and research establishments are no different to that. Thinking, how can you ensure that you are on the same page, that you are not thinking one thing and your PI is thinking another, that you're on the same page? I think this comes back to regular meetings. If you are in the privileged position of just starting a fresh postdoc, then taking the time to sit down and working out how communication is going to work out between you, what you need, what they need. All the principal investigators that I know are extremely busy people. They have lots and lots of different jobs. Yes, boss is one of their hats, but they are also student supervisors. They probably teach. They're on various university committees. They might have other obligations to the institution as well. So they are usually extremely busy, and they do not have time to handhold a postdoc. And you are now a professional researcher. So the handholding days of perhaps your studenthood, you need to move on from those and really put yourself in the driving seat. So thinking about not only how you can best communicate together and thinking about your communication styles, but what can you do to make life easy for you both? And that might be as simple as coming prepared for meetings with agendas and the work ready, etc., etc., giving people enough time to read material if that's part of why you're meeting. But I think it's also, there is something about reciprocity in there, that you need to make sure that you can, both of you are getting something from the relationship of being boss and postdoc. And too often I see postdocs kind of come to their PIs with almost like a shopping list And that's really not, a way of holding your hand out for sweeties. It's thinking, actually, to some extent, have you gone through and really thought about the business case for whatever it is you're asking? So a typical thing might be, I need to go to this conference. Well, why do you need to go into a conference? What good will it do the PI and their research group? What good will it do you? And really outlining that business case to go, rather than just expecting it to happen as if by magic. Perhaps the days of hopping on a plane to every conference have gone, but it's just thinking, how are you going to manage that relationship? Reciprocity is one thing. I think understanding the shoes of your PI as well, and understanding what might frustrate them, and then thinking about your trigger points. So you might be the type of person who really, really doesn't like being told what to do, especially if you feel that you are the expert. Thinking about how you might get around that communication issue before you have a real blowout. So sitting down and really thinking, how do you best communicate? How do you best work? But then also doing that important empathic thing of working out how that might look for your PI, and then trying to find a happy middle ground. So the expectations are there in the Concordat for your manager to look after your career, but also the onus is on you as well. So there are expectations on you. So put yourself in the driving seat. You're the only person who is going to prioritize your career. You might have the best boss in the world, but they have their own career to manage. And on that, I will leave you with those thoughts. If you want to chat through about your supervisor or anything else, then you can contact me through this platform. It would be lovely to have a chat. Have a brilliant Thursday afternoon.